News. ISIS militants continue to advance on the Syrian border town of Kobani and launch attacks on Baghdad suburbs, inching closer to Iraq's capital. With me now, retired General Bob Scales, Fox News military analyst, and retired Lieutenant Colonel Dan Hampton. All right, good evening, generals, gentlemen. General, I'm going to go to you first. We have a JV team, a ragtag group, and we, the United States, have been conducting airstrikes for almost 3 weeks, and this ragtag team is about to fall Kobani, and they are inching closer to Baghdad. Right. So everybody agrees the airstrikes alone isn't going to do it. So how do we do it, General?
Well, we do it like we did it as an example in the early days of the Afghan war in 2001 and 2002. You take highly trained, selected special forces soldiers, much like that ranger you just talked about, put them in small teams and have them close to the front lines to be able to call in airstrikes. And that makes your airstrikes more precise. It increases the increases the lethality of the airstrikes, and you're able to get up close and kill the enemy face to face. Right now, this is just plinking. The airstrikes are relatively ineffective because the enemy's gone to ground. He's hiding among the people, and every day that goes by, we're less and less able to kill them.
They have dispersed. They got it. ISIS gets it. But they're saying that they're attacking from the east and the west. So they're coming in on both sides. But I'll go to you, Colonel Hampton. You actually think that we should join forces with Assad. Why do you say that?
Well, Judge, we need boots on the ground. That's obviously plain, but they don't need to be American boots. All right, they don't need to be American boots, and Assad is right there. He has a vested interest in making sure that ISIS does not succeed. All right, he has more at stake than anybody else does in the region, and he can handle it. All right, he can do it, especially if American air cover provides air support.
All right, but you know, we're not sending the troops, and you know, we can't train the rebels. So who should send the troops?
Well, I think Assad can. I think between
he's already
the
doing
Kurds
that now. He's fighting them now.
Yeah, he's doing it, but we haven't offered him much of an incentive to do more, and he could. I mean, his army's been about cut in half.
Let me ask you a question, Colonel. Why should we offer him an incentive? His whole regime is at stake.
Well, we've backed a lot of people that are a lot worse than he did. You may recall a guy named Joe Stalin during World War II who was a lot worse than Bashar Assad has ever been. And he was an ally of convenience. That's all Assad is. If you want to stabilize the region, it's going to have to be done by the people that are there, not from U.S. troops coming 10,000 miles away. We've tried that 3 or 4 times in the last 50 years. We don't want to do that.
So, General, what do you think of that?
Well, I think it's a bad idea. Let's forget about the moral and values side of this, a man that's used gas on his people and killed 200,000 of his citizens, and talk about national security. Assad's best friend is Iran. They're both Shiites, and Iran is the greatest exporter of terrorism in the world, far worse than ISIS.
So why isn't Iran helping Syria?
The great fear, well, because they're a client state, just like Hezbollah is their action agent. And the nightmare solution is for Iran, allied with Syria, to gain nuclear weapons. And we have to think the first thing that's important to us is worrying about our national security, about terrorist threats to the United States. And the greatest terrorist threat to the United States right now isn't ISIS, it's Iran and their surrogates.
All right, Colonel Hampton, I'm going to go back to you. You think maybe joining forces with Iran or becoming an ally with Iran is a good idea? Tell us why.
Absolutely. I'll tell you why. They're going to get nuclear weapons anyway. If they were an ally, at least a tacit ally of the United States, then they wouldn't use them on us. And if they were an ally of us, then we could single-handedly cut the knees off of 90% of the terrorist funding in the world, because they do it. They crave international recognition and an economic solution to their problems a lot more than they crave supporting terrorism. And if they were now an ally of us in the region, and they also have a vested interest in defeating ISIS,
but you know what,
then
guys,
it would work.
What doesn't make sense to me is that Iran and Syria are the Alawites, they're Shia. They're naturally allies with each other. We shouldn't have to give concessions or do anything. They want to fight ISIS, let them fight ISIS. In general, I agree with you. We've got a vested interest in this as well. But, you know, how do we win? If Syria can't do it, All right, and because they've been losing, although they killed 200,000 people, ISIS is on the march. These people are about to take down Kobani. And if they do, is that a strategic win for them?
Yes.
Well, that's all the more reason. That's all the more reason, Judge, why you need Bashar al-Assad involved in this, because he's the only one who can prevent that from happening. It's time to be pragmatic with politics and not live in the past. Forget about the things that have happened before.
When you say that, is that Assad initially said, "Don't you dare come into my country. I'm a sovereign country," and then he shut up, which tells me that maybe there is some back room we're really working together. Last word, General Scales.
Well, absolutely.
Yeah, I think the last word is the worst thing we could ever do is ally ourselves with the greatest terrorist threat on the planet, who's in the process of developing nuclear weapons. Look,
all right. General Scales and Colonel Hampton, thank you so much. A great discussion.
Thank you, Judge.
You're welcome.
All right. And coming up, why are Turkey